Numerous religious sects arose in the Middle Gangetic Basin in the 6th century BC. We hear of as many as 62 religious sects in this period. Many of these sects were based on regional customs and rituals, practiced by different peoples living in northeast India. Of these sects, Buddhism was one of the most important and emerged as the most potent religious reform movements. In post-Vedic times, society was clearly divided into 4 varnas. They are Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Each varna was assigned well-defined functions, although it was emphasized that varna was based on birth, and the 2 higher varnas were given some privileges. The Brahmanas, who were given the functions of priests and teachers, claimed the highest status in society. They demanded several privileges, including those of receiving gifts and exemption from taxation and punishment. In post-Vedic texts, we have many instances or such privileges enjoyed by them. The Kshatriyas ranked second in the Varna hierarchy. They fought and governed and lived on the taxes collected from the peasants. The Vaishyas were engaged in agriculture, cattle rearing and trade. They appeared as principal taxpayers. However, along with the 2 higher varnas, they were placed in the category of Dvija, or the twice-born. A Dvija was entitled to wearing sacred thread and studying the Vedas, from which the Sudras were kept out. The Sudras were meant for serving the 3 higher varnas, and along with women were barred from taking to Vedic studies. They appear as domestic slaves, agricultural slaves, craftsmen and hired labourers in post-Vedic times. They were called cruel, greedy and thieving in habits, and some of them were treated as untouchables. The higher the varna, the more privileged and purer a person was. The lower the varna of an offender, the more severe was the punishment prescribed for him. Naturally, the varna-divided society seems to have generated tensions. We have no means to find out the reactions of the Vaishyas and the Sudras. The Kshatriyas, who acted as ruler, however, reacted strongly against the ritualistic domination of the Brahmanas and seem to have led a body of protest movement against the importance attached to birth in the Varna system. The Kshatriya reaction against the domination of the priestly class called Brahmanas, who claimed various privileges, was one of the causes of the origin of Buddhism. Gautama Buddha, who founded Buddhism, belonged to the Kshatriya clan, disputed the authority of the Brahmanas. But the real cause of the rise of these new religions lay in the introduction of a new agricultural economy in northeastern India, has about 100 centimeters of rainfall. Before those areas came to be colonized on a large scale, they were thickly forested. The thick jungles could not be cleared without the aid of iron axes. Although some people lived in this area before 600 BC, they used implements of stone and copper, and they led a precarious life on riverbanks and confluences where land was opened to settlement through the process of erosion and flooding. In the middle Gangetic Basin, large-scale habitations began from about 600 BC, when iron came to be used in this area. The use of iron tools made possible clearance, agriculture and large settlements. The agricultural economy, based on the iron ploughshare, required the use of bullocks, and it could not flourish without animal husbandry. But the Vedic practice of killing cattle indiscriminately in sacrifices stood in the way of the progress of new agriculture. The cattle wealth slowly decimated because the cows and bullocks were killed in numerous Vedic sacrifices. The tribal people living on the southern and eastern fringes of Magadha Empire also killed battle for food. But if the new agrarian economy had to be stable, this killing had to be stopped. The period saw the rise of a large number of cities in northeastern India. We may refer, for example, to Kausambi, Kusinagar, Banaras, Vaisali, Chirand, and Rajgir. Besides others, these cities had many artisans and traders who began to use coins for the first time. The earliest coins belong to the 5th century BC. The use of coins naturally facilitated trade and commerce, which added to the importance of the Vaisyas. In the Brahmanical society, the Vaisyas ranked third, the first two being Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. Naturally, they looked for some religion which would improve their position. The Vaisyas extended generous support to Gautama Buddha. The merchants, called the Sethis, made handsome gifts to Gautama Buddha and his disciples. There were several reasons for it. First, Buddhism in the initial stage did not attach any importance to the existing Varna system. Second, they preached the gospel of non-violence, which would put an end to wars between different kingdoms and consequently promote trade and commerce. Third, the Brahmanical law books, called the Dharma Sutras, decried lending money on interest. A person who lived on interest was condemned by them. Therefore, the Vaisyas, who lent money on account of growing trade and commerce, were not held in esteem and were eager to improve their social status. On the other hand, we also notice a strong reaction against various forms of private property. Old-fashioned people did not like the use and accumulation of coins, made certainly of silver and copper, and possibly of gold. They detested new dwellings and dresses, new systems of transport, which amounted to luxury, and they hated war and violence. The new forms of property created social inequalities and caused misery and suffering to the masses of the people. So the common people yearned to return to primitive life. They wanted to get back to the ascetic ideal, which dispensed with the new forms of property and the new style of life. Both Jainism and Buddhism preferred simple, Puritan, ascetic living. The Buddhist monks were asked to forego the good things of life. They were not allowed to touch gold and silver. They were to accept only as much from their patrons as was sufficient to keep body and soul together. They therefore rebelled against the material advantages stemming from the new life in the Gangetic Basin. In other words, we find the same kind of reaction against the changes in material life in northeastern India in the 6th century BC, as we notice against the changes introduced by the Industrial Revolution in modern times. Just as the advent of Industrial Revolution made many people think of return to the pre-machine age life, similarly people in the past wanted to return to the pre-Iron Age life.